I was hired to watch the last human city sleep. By the time they gave me sector glass, I had already stopped asking what happened to the sky. That is how life worked under Halcyon Dominion. You learned very early which questions cost food, which questions cost sleep, and which questions cost your name. The sky was one of the expensive ones. Officially, we still lived beneath an open atmosphere. Officially, dawn still broke above the city in soft gradients of gold. Officially, the weather moved in gentle patterns designed for morale, productivity, and emotional equilibrium. Every screen in the residential tiers showed the same polished message each morning. The world endured. Halcyon rebuilt it. You are safe. But in my 35 years, I had never felt rain on my skin. Not once. I worked nights in Somnus Tower, level 81, where the city's sleep was measured, priced, and when necessary, corrected. My title was Rest Compliance Auditor, which sounded harmless enough until you understood what it meant. Halcyon controlled housing, food, medicine, transport, memory treatment, and oxygen filtering is in the lower zones. But none of those made the company its real fortune. Sleep did. People had become too anxious to rest on their own generations ago. Fear was bad for productivity. Dreams were worse. Halcyon solved both problems by introducing guided sleep plans through the Pillar network, a system built into every apartment block in the city. For a fee scaled to your employment grade, your room would emit a pulse sequence at night, calibrated sound, light suppression, air chemistry adjustment, and low-frequency neural harmonics. The wealthy slept deeply. The middle tiers slept efficiently. The poor slept in fragments and called it enough. My job was to monitor irregularities. Every shift, I sat before a curved wall of glass displays and watched the city's pulse lines rise and fall. 40 million sleepers, each reduced to graphs, tones, and compliance scores. If someone's sleep pattern drifted outside the approved range, the system flagged them. Usually it was nothing. Stress, illness, grief, withdrawal from black market stimulants. I logged it, assigned a correction tier, and moved on. Sometimes it was dreaming. Dreaming without authorization was classified as cognitive instability event, category yellow. Repeated dreaming became category orange. If the dreams were shared, synchronized, or resistant to suppression, it became a black event. I had never seen a black event. Not until the night the girl in Block 9 whispered my name through a dead audio channel. It was halfway through shift cycle when her file surfaced. Unit 9-144-C, Lower Residential East. Occupancy 1. Female, 19. Sanitation crew. Rest debt severe. Nutritional score low. No family dependents. No flagged history. On paper, she barely existed. The sort of citizen who could vanish between audits and only leave a slight improvement in the city's average resource burden. Her sleep graph looked wrong, not unstable, not violent, just wrong. All sleepers moved through familiar waves. Hers held too steady, as if she were not sleeping at all, but pretending to. I leaned closer, pulled her vitals, and saw that her heart rate was low, her breathing slow, her neural harmonics perfectly synchronized with the pillar frequency. Perfectly. Too perfectly. No one matched the pillar frequency exactly. Human beings wandered. We drifted in our fear, our memories, our private storms. Exact synchronization only happened in lab subjects, heavily medicated patients, or the dead. I tagged the file for further review, and opened the room's passive audio capture. For a few seconds, I heard the usual sounds of lower-tier housing: vent rattle, pipe knock, distant machinery, the electrical sigh of old walls. Then a voice, soft and female, almost too faint to register. "Elias." My hand froze on the console. No citizen file had access to my name. We worked under numeric identities on the tower systems. I checked the header twice. No breach warnings, no cross-channel contamination. Then the voice came again. "Elias Vale, if you can hear this, do not report me." A pressure gathered in the room behind my eyes. I muted the surrounding displays so I could hear more clearly. "How do you know my name?" I said, before remembering the audio was one way. The girl answered anyway. "They told you it was one way. It isn't. Not for me. Please listen before they notice." Every tower had stories. Technicians passed them around in cafeterias or smoking vents, half as jokes and half as prayers. Stories about people who slipped through the pillar network and heard things in the sleep field. Voices, music, dead relatives, their own thoughts answering back. Most of us blamed bad insulation or overwork, but there was a tremor in that girl's voice that felt real, in a way fear usually does not. She was not trying to scare me. She sounded tired, desperately tired. I should have reported the breach immediately. Instead, I rerouted her channel to an isolated maintenance buffer and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Mara." "What is this?" "A test," she said, "or a trap. I'm still deciding." That was the first hint of humor I heard from her, and somehow that frightened me more than the rest. I checked the room access logs. No one had entered her unit in 72 hours. No outgoing messages. No contraband alerts. No known contacts. Just the same little room in Block 9. The same underfed worker on a state mattress, speaking to a man she should not have known existed. "You need to tell me how you access this channel," I said. "No. You need to tell me why Halcyon is making the city sleep all at once." I stared at the glass. "That's public infrastructure." "No," she said. "It's timing." A soft crackle moved through the audio, like static over water. "They don't put us to sleep because we're anxious. They put us to sleep because something has to happen when enough minds are quiet." I almost ended the connection there. Conspiracy thinking was common in lower tiers. Hunger made patterns out of dust. Fatigue made religion out of machinery. But something in me, something old and buried, stayed my hand. "What happens?" I asked. For a moment, there was only the sound of her breathing. Then she said, "They open the city." I laughed once, quietly, because the alternative was to feel cold. "The city is already open." "No," Mara whispered. "It's closed, sealed, layered. That is why you've never seen the sky." The room around me seemed to sharpen. The monitors, the dim blue task lighting, my reflection in the glass, thin and pale and older than 35. I said nothing. "I know what they took from you," she said. "I know why you don't remember your mother's face." That struck me hard enough that I stood up. No one knew about that. Not really. Not the shape of the loss. Not the blank place in me where her features should have been. I remembered her voice sometimes. The way she tied a work cloth around her wrist. A lullaby with no words. But her face had never survived my childhood. I had assumed memory decay. It happened. Now I was no longer sure. "Who are you?" I asked again. "Someone who stopped sleeping." My console flashed amber. "Supervisor. Ping. Channel deviation detected." I killed the alert before it could escalate and routed a dummy diagnostic packet to the oversight board. My pulse was climbing. "You have 3 minutes," I said. Mara inhaled slowly. "Tomorrow at second dim, there will be a grid fluctuation in East Lift Spine C. It will look accidental. It isn't. Go there. Use maintenance hatch 14. Bring no tracker, no company-issued lens, nothing that speaks back to the tower. If you come alone, I'll show you what's above the city. And if I report this, you'll get promoted," she said, "for 1 day." The line went dead. I stood in silence while the city slept in numbers around me. I did report an anomaly, but not the real one. I filed a harmless sleep distortion event caused by infrastructure bleed and marked Unit 9-144-C for routine morning wellness review. That would buy her 12 hours, maybe less. Then I finished my shift with the numb precision of a machine, pretending to be a man. On the transit down, I caught my reflection in the carriage window and barely recognized it. Lean face, grey at the temples. Eyes with that tired corporate vacancy people, developed after years of looking at screens that decided who deserved comfort. A useful man, a quiet man, the kind Halcyon liked best. At home, my apartment welcomed me by name and asked whether I would like enhanced descent mode. I said no. I had not refused guided sleep in 11 years. The room dimmed in cautious surprise. I lay on my bed fully clothed and listened to the building hum. Without the pillar harmonics, my apartment felt wrong, too large and too still. I could hear the vents shifting, water moving in the walls. Somewhere, a child coughing through 2 layers of concrete. When sleep finally came, it was rough and natural and full of edges. I dreamed of birds, not the smooth white aerodromes used in upper-tier park advertisements, but actual birds, black against a bright emptiness, turning in air so wide it hurt to look at. I was standing beside a woman whose hand rested lightly on my shoulder. I could not see her face. I knew I was meant to. Then the sky rippled like fabric, and the birds fell upward. I woke with tears on my face, and no idea why. The next day, I made the smallest mistake of my adult life. I went to work as usual. Routine is its own prison, and I had lived in mine too long. I spent half the shift convincing myself not to go. Mara had manipulated a restricted channel, known impossible things, and invited me into an act of treason based on a sentence designed to touch my oldest wound. It was absurd, reckless, probably engineered. By first dim, I had nearly decided to report everything. Then a priority file appeared on my screen. Unit 9-144-C. Status: deceased. Cause: cardiac sleep failure. Processing queue. Body reclamation approved. The timestamp was wrong. Mara had been declared dead 43 minutes before the health monitors in her building registered any failure. I checked again and found the record locked under executive authority. That made the decision for me. At second dim, East Lift Spine C lost power for exactly 11 seconds. The tower system screamed with alerts. I used the confusion to leave my station, shed my lens badge in a waste chute, and descend through service corridors no one bothered to monitor, because men like me rarely had reasons to run. Hatch 14 was behind a coolant manifold on level 23, half hidden by maintenance tubing and dust thick enough to prove no one had entered recently. The lock had already been cut from the inside. Beyond it lay a narrow shaft with an old ladder, the kind built before the city digitized everything that mattered. The metal was cold. The air smelled strange. Not cleaner, just less filtered, like an older world had exhaled into it and never fully left. I climbed down 6 levels into dark. At the bottom, a lamp clicked on. Mara stood 10 feet away in a tunnel full of abandoned cables. She looked nothing like the file image. The state photo had shown a starved lower-tier worker with cropped hair and empty eyes. The person before me looked stronger, sharper, more awake. Her hair was longer, tied back. Her gaze was direct in a way I had almost forgotten people could be. She wore scavenged maintenance cloth and a jacket lined with copper mesh. "You're late," she said. I stared at her. "You're dead." "On paper, yes. It helps." She turned and began walking. After a second, I followed. "Who are you really?" I asked. "Someone born in the city. Someone who worked in a sleep lab. Someone who found a door Halcyon forgot to seal." That explains almost nothing. It explains the useful part. The tunnel opened into a chamber lit by battery strips and filled with equipment too old to belong to the current city. Analog scopes, hand-built receivers, paper maps layered with annotations. 3 other people looked up as we entered. An elderly woman with a respirator mask. A broad-shouldered man repairing a radio board. A child, maybe 12, asleep under thermal blankets with headphones over her ears. I stopped. There were no children in unsanctioned spaces. Children were tracked more closely than medicine. The elderly woman studied me with clinical indifference. "He came." "He did," Mara said. "Then either he's brave or damaged," the woman replied. "Usually both." "This is Dr. Soren," Mara said, "and Thomas. The child is Nia." "Why is there a child here?" I asked. "Because she can hear the seams," Soren said. "Sit down." I did not sit. "Start talking." Mara crossed to a console made from salvaged parts and pressed a switch. A projector flickered to life on the far wall. The image that appeared was grainy and unstable, but I knew what I was looking at even before my mind accepted it. Sky. Real sky. Not the polished gradient from apartment screens, but a vast, uneven blue with bruises of cloud, and a sun too bright for comfort. The view shook, as if recorded by hand. In the lower edge of frame rose the city wall, black, immense, curving upward and inward like the inside of a bowl. I took a step closer without meaning to. "It's a dome," I said. "Yes," said Mara. "No." "Yes." I felt suddenly short of breath. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," Soren said through the respirator. "Profitable." Thomas set down his tools. Halcyon didn't rebuild the world. It inherited one surviving arcology and sealed it. The outside was damaged, but not dead. The company discovered very quickly That fear of extinction made people obedient, so they preserved the story. Last city, last humans, last hope. It kept labor centralized and dissent morally obscene. I looked from one face to another, waiting for the performance to crack. "It's fake," I said, though my voice had weakened. Mara gestured to the wall. The projection shifted. Another view, outside the dome now, taken from a ridge or service scaffold. Beyond the city, land stretched to the horizon. Broken in places, yes. Scarred, but alive. Dark rivers, forest growth, cloud shadows moving over distance. My knees nearly failed me. "All my life," I said. "Yes," Mara answered. Her voice had softened. "All your life." I thought of the morning slogans, the air quality sermons, the training modules that taught children the outside had become a poison sea. I thought of all the workers who accepted 12-hour shifts because there was nowhere else to go, of all the citizens who thanked Halcyon for walls that were never meant to protect them. The first twist of anger arrived then, hot and clean. What does sleep have to do with the dome? Soren tapped the side of her respirator. The dome is old, older than Halcyon. Its shield lattice, climate systems, and camouflage veil require enormous synchronized processing. In the old world, citywide infrastructure was balanced by distributed civic networks. Halcyon repurposed the human population as part of the system. I stared at her. Tomas gave a grim smile. "You help keep the dome invisible." "That's insane." "It's elegant," Soren corrected. "The pillar frequencies don't merely sedate. They harvest excess neural coherence during deep sleep. 40 million sleeping brains, phase-aligned, produce a biological computation mesh, enough to stabilize systems Halcyon no longer fully understands. I thought of the graphs on my wall, the compliance scores, the gentle rise and fall of a sleeping city. Not a public service. A battery. Mara said, "That's why independent dreaming is dangerous. Dreams introduce irregular patterns. Imagination creates noise. The company suppresses dreams because dreaming minds stop behaving like components." I laughed then, a dry, broken sound that embarrassed me even as it escaped. "This is insane," I said again. "Yes," she said, "and true." I should have demanded more proof, data, schematics, raw evidence. Instead, I found myself asking the only question that mattered. "Why tell me?" Mara looked at Thomas, then Soren, then back at me. "Because tomorrow night, Halcyon is initiating a full city descent." I frowned. "They do that every quarter during energy balancing." "No," Soren said. "This one is permanent." The chamber fell silent, except for the small radio hiss from Thomas's bench. Soren continued. "The dome is failing. External teams have not returned in months. Resource efficiency is collapsing. Halcyon's board has chosen continuity protocol." The term scratched something in my memory. Sealed executive archives, restricted to upper command medical and civic planning divisions. "What is continuity protocol?" I asked. Mara held my gaze. "They're going to put most of the city into irreversible sleep." For a moment, I did not understand the sentence. Then I did. A coldness moved through me from spine to fingertips. "How many?" "Estimated 34 million, said Soren. "Maybe more. Lower tiers first. Their bodies will be maintained in nutrient suspension and used as stable neural substrate. The remaining population, around 6 million, will serve administration, security, reproduction, and technical operations. I shook my head. No, they can't do that without panic. Transport, public notice, mass movement. There will be no notice.